Linda A. Class. Flying to Mexico. My name is Ravi, and I'm from Punjab, India. Life was hard. My father worked tirelessly on a small farm, and I wanted to help my family. I often watched videos about life in America and thought, if I can get there, maybe I can work and send money home. One day, I found out that getting a tourist visa to Mexico was easier than getting one to the United States. I applied, and I was approved. I told my mother, "Don't worry. I will succeed. I'll find a job in America." The flight from Delhi to Mexico City took more than 20 hours. When I arrived, I was exhausted but excited. I felt that I was already close to my dream. Meeting the Coyote. At the airport, I met a man named Carlos. He was holding a sign with my name on it. A friend from my village had given me his phone number. Carlos smiled and said, "You want to get into the U.S.? I can help you. It'll cost $5,000. I had brought cash, so I gave it to him. I asked, "Will it be dangerous?" He said, "No. We'll travel with a group. I've done this for many years. It's easy." He took me to a small house where there were 12 other people. Mostly from India, but also from Nepal and Bangladesh. Carlos said, "We'll leave in 2 days." Entering the jungle. 2 nights later, we got into a van and drove for several hours. Then we got out and started walking. The weather was extremely hot. I carried a small backpack with water, some biscuits, and my phone. We walked into a thick jungle, surrounded by trees. Mosquitoes bit my arms and neck. I was soaked with sweat and very thirsty. One night, it rained heavily. We had no tents, and everyone got completely wet. On the 3rd day, one of our group members fell. He was coughing badly and looked very weak. I gave him some water. He said, "Thank you, brother." My feet hurt and were covered with blisters, but I gritted my teeth and kept walking. Crossing the river. Finally, we reached a wide and fast-moving river. Carlos said, "We're going to cross by boat now." When I looked at the boat, it was small and old. It was probably meant for 4 people, but 8 of us squeezed in. Halfway across, the boat started taking in water. Someone shouted, "The boat is leaking!" Carlos yelled, "Jump! Swim across!" I didn't know how to swim well, but I had no choice. I jumped into the water. It was freezing, like knives cutting my skin. My backpack floated away, along with my phone and all my money. I barely made it to the shore, coughing and shivering. I had nothing left. Lost and sick. We kept walking. My clothes were soaked, and I started to get a fever. I felt hot and cold at the same time. My head hurt, and I was very hungry. I wanted to use my phone to translate and ask a local woman for help, but my phone was already broken. I sat under a tree, burning with fever. I thought to myself, I might die here. I pictured my mother's face. I told myself, stand up. You have to survive. Betrayed. Carlos came to me and said, give me more money. I said, I lost everything in the river. He got angry, pushed me to the ground, and shouted, then stay here. He left with the others. I was abandoned, all alone. I cried. I was terrified. I drank dirty water from a puddle. It tasted strange, but I had no choice. The border fence. 2 days later, I was walking alone when I saw a tall barbed wire fence in the distance. When I got closer, I saw a few people cutting it open with scissors. One of them said to me, come quickly. Hurry. I ran over, my heart pounding. I climbed through the hole. The barbed wire cut my arm, and I started bleeding. But I didn't stop. I had entered the United States. A new beginning. About 10 minutes later, I saw the U.S. Border Patrol. I didn't run. I raised my hands. I said, I am asking for asylum. At first, they didn't understand. But I kept repeating it. They took me to a detention center. It was cold there, but I had food and water. I was still alive. I met many people like me. Some cried. Some prayed. I thought about my family. About all the pain, fear, and persistence along the way. I told myself, I made it. I am in America. Now, I will work hard for a better life. Days in detention. When they took me to the detention center, my hands were cuffed, and my ankles were chained. I had never been treated like a criminal before. But I didn't resist. I knew I had made it to America. Inside was a large room filled with people like me. Many were from Central America. Some from Africa, a few from Asia. The air smelled like bleach and sweat. We slept on thin mats on the floor, covered only by a blanket. I kept coughing. My throat burned, and I was running a fever. I told the guard I was sick. They made me wait the whole day before I could see a nurse. She gave me some syrup and said, "Drink lots of water. Rest." I asked her, "Will they send me back to India?" She shook her head. "You have the right to apply for asylum." At that moment, a small light of hope flickered inside me. The asylum interview. A few days later, a Hindi-speaking interpreter helped me talk to an immigration officer. "Why didn't you come legally?" the officer asked. I tried. I answered. But I was denied a visa. I needed to work and support my family. If I return to India, I fear for my life. He asked about my journey, who helped me, who I paid. I told him about Carlos, and how he abandoned me in the desert. He said, "You may apply for asylum, but it's a long process." I signed papers, gave fingerprints, and took a photo. He told me, "You may stay in detention for months, or you might be released while your case is pending." I nodded. At least I had a chance. The day I was free. 3 weeks later, I was granted parole. When I walked out of the detention center, the sun was shining. I breathed in the American air. Free air, for the first time. A friend from my hometown picked me up. He had driven 4 hours from California. He hugged me tightly and said, "You made it, brother." Struggles and hope. I moved into the small room he rented, 2 beds. Shared space. We lived simply. I started working on a strawberry farm. $10 an hour. 10 hours a day. My hands cracked. My back ached. The sun burned my skin. But I thought of my mother. I told myself, this pain has purpose. I joined a free English class. The teacher said, "You can do it. Just learn a little each day." I pulled out my phone. Used the translator app, memorized words slowly. One day, I got a letter from immigration court. I had a hearing in 6 months. I was scared, but I would go. I would tell my story. I don't know if my asylum will be approved. But I know, I survived. From India to Mexico. Through jungle. Mountains. Rivers. And wire fences. I was hungry. Sick. abandoned, but I didn't give up. Now I'm in America. I work. I learn. I wait. This road is long. It is hard. But I am no longer afraid. Because I know, I've already come farther than most people ever will. The court day. The day of my hearing finally came. I woke up before sunrise. I didn't sleep much the night before. I wore the cleanest clothes I had, faded jeans and a button-up shirt. I bought for $3 at a thrift store. My friend drove me to the immigration court. The building looked big and cold. My hands were shaking. I kept asking myself, what if the judge says no? What if I get deported? When I walked into the courtroom, I saw the judge sitting high behind a desk. An interpreter stood beside me. The judge looked serious but not angry. She asked me simple questions first. What is your full name? Where are you from? Do you understand your rights today? I answered slowly. The interpreter helped me. Then she asked, why did you come to the United States? I told her everything, my poverty, my fear, my journey, my sickness, how I almost died. She listened carefully, took notes, and then said, thank you. I will review your case. You will get a letter in the mail. And just like that, it was over. I walked out feeling both empty and hopeful. The waiting. Waiting was the hardest part. Every day. I checked the mailbox. No letter. Every day. I asked myself, will they send me back? I couldn't sleep. I had nightmares. Sometimes, I dreamed I was back in the jungle. Other nights, I saw my mother crying. I kept working on the farm. My hands were rough and full of cuts. But work helped me forget. I studied English at night. I learned words like hope, freedom, judge, and paperwork. Sometimes I cried alone. But I never told my friend. I didn't want him to worry. I told myself, you didn't come this far just to give up. The letter came. One morning, I saw an envelope in the mailbox. It had the seal of the U.S. Department of Justice. My hands were shaking as I opened it. My eyes ran over the words until I saw it. Your asylum application has been granted. I froze. I read it again. And again. Then I cried. I fell to my knees right there by the mailbox. I didn't care who saw me. For the first time in years, I felt safe. I felt like I belonged somewhere. I ran inside to tell my friend. He hugged me and said, "You made it, brother." Calling home again. That night, I called my mother in India. It had been over a year since I last heard her voice. "Ma," I said softly. "It's me. I'm safe now." She cried right away. She couldn't believe it. "I thought you died," she said. "Every day I prayed." I told her everything: Mexico, the jungle, being sick, the court, the wait. She just kept crying and saying, "Thank you, God." I promised her that one day, I'd bring her here. We talked for an hour. I didn't want to hang up. I felt like I had my family back again. A new life begins. I studied hard and passed the written driving test. I failed the road test once, but passed the second time. When I held my driver's license in my hand, I smiled like a child. It meant freedom. I found a job as a dishwasher in a restaurant, legal work, with real paychecks and a name badge. Later, I became a cook. I saved money. I shared a small apartment at first, then rented my own. It wasn't big, just one room, a small kitchen, and a mattress on the floor, but it was mine. I hung up a photo of my mother on the wall. I lit a candle and said, "Ma, I'm doing it. I'm building a life. Helping others like me." At the shelter where I once stayed, I began to volunteer on weekends. I translated for new migrants who didn't speak English, just like I didn't back then. One man from Bangladesh asked me, "Is it worth it?" I looked at him and said, "Yes. But it's hard. You'll cry. You'll want to give up. But don't." I told him about Carlos, the jungle, the sickness, the waiting, the fear, and also the hope. Sometimes I cried when I shared my story, but it helped them feel less alone. I wanted them to know, you're not forgotten. You can make it too. Bringing my mother to America. After I got my work permit and saved enough, I filed a petition for my mother. The paperwork was long. The interviews were stressful. But after nearly 2 years, she finally got her visa. I waited at the airport, holding flowers. When I saw her, I ran. She was older, thinner, but her smile was still the same. We hugged for minutes. She cried in my arms. She said, "You did it, Beta. You made a new home." I took her to my little apartment. She touched the walls and said, "So clean." It wasn't much. But to her, and to me, it was heaven. My American dream. 5 years after I arrived in the U.S., I applied for citizenship. The day of the oath ceremony, I wore my best shirt. I stood with people from all over the world: Mexico, China, Syria, Nigeria. We raised our right hands. When I said, "I take this obligation freely," my eyes filled with tears. I was no longer a ghost in the shadows. I was someone. A few months later, I voted for the first time. I stared at the ballot and whispered, "I have a voice now." It was just a small checkmark. But to me, it was the loudest sound in the world. However, the United States has now changed and is expelling illegal immigrants and no longer accepting them.